The Canadian Context, episode 10. And I'm here joined by our host, Abigail, and myself, Dylan, and with a special guest. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Jaze Bordeaux, producer, writer, director, based out of Toronto, known most recently for EFC. It's a women's mixed martial arts film we just dropped late last year. And yeah, I'm excited here to come and talk to you guys about, Canada, Ontario, the film industry in Canada, and everything else Canadian, right?
Yeah, we are so happy to have you here with us today. This is one I've been looking forward to because I'm actually very interested in the film industry. So, I'd like to start talking about your roots and what first drew you to filmmaking and how that sort of evolved into directing and writing and producing films. You seem to have a really broad palette.
So I actually was in the bank. My background was in banking and finance,
Mm-hmm.
and somewhere I think after the last meltdown in the world, financial meltdown, 07, 08, I decided to pursue a different path. Just look at something completely different. I didn't know what that was going to be at the time. But I was actually in Vancouver. I remember landing there because I was going there just to meet a different group of people for something completely unrelated to film and entertainment. And I remember getting a weird phone call when I got off the plane. Literally, I was in the airport and I got this strange call from Alberta. And somebody from Alberta was looking for financing for like a film slate, and it was just something not in my peripheral view. I didn't really know much about the sector. It's not uncommon, coming from an investment bank background to get calls like that.
Mm-hmm.
And but it had me really thinking. I'm like, hmm. Well, there's a sector here. There's an industry that obviously does make a lot of money. I just don't know anything about it. And as I started to kind of investigate it a little bit more, because I was in Vancouver at the time, and for people who don't know, and sometimes I'm surprised how many Canadians aren't aware of the level of film productions that happen in Canada, especially between Vancouver and Toronto. So I was in Vancouver at the time, and they obviously had a lot of. They were probably going through a record number in terms of film productions. So just through networks and contacts, I wanted to understand more about that aspect of the business, how these things are made, how they're created, try to identify gaps in the market. Is there an opportunity here or not?
Mm-hmm.
And as I explored it, I realized back then one of the biggest obstacles, especially when it comes to independent filmmaking, not so much the big studio stuff, was distribution. And back then, it was very obvious to a lot of people that the future was going to be streaming. It was going to be exactly what we're seeing right now with Netflix, Amazon, Apple, and the various streaming platforms, with films and content being readily accessible to anybody at any point in time. And it was very clear that the future was going to depend on IP content because they would all be fighting for it. How much content could they produce to kind of satisfy the appetite that the audience or the market could have, right? That was the question. So I realized back then the future was obviously going to be in establishing IPs, creating contents and films. So we kind of started on that track, I think around 2012, through a lot of trial and error. Um, and somewhere along the way, I shouldn't say somewhere along the way, I knew in the beginning I did want to direct. It was something that I really, it just caught my attention right away. It was something I really wanted to learn how to do. It was something I thought I could have a lot of fun with. And I could do that every day, to be honest with you, if I could. it's just I have to wear my producing hat more than my directing hat on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah.
Just because the business side is probably 90% of the work um, versus the other side, but that's fine too. It's fine. It's completely fine in that regards, right? So that's a little bit of just a few small steps in terms of ultimately how we got to where we are in terms of building our film slate and the films that we have coming out. And obviously, we're in Toronto, and I know we're talking all things Canadian here. And one of the big reasons we're in Toronto is because Toronto is a bigger hub for the film industry in North America than people realize. It's not just, we have a lot of, the service sector for film is huge in Canada in the sense that American productions come here. They hire the production teams that are Canadian. Obviously, they cast Canadian actors and actresses. There's a lot of Canadians that work on these big American productions because they're coming to shoot here. But one of the things that people don't know is Toronto's also a big financial hub for film production. A lot of the Canadian banks are heavily involved in the financing of these productions. Obviously, there's built-in guarantees with governments and tax credits in various scenarios. But downtown Toronto, if you come, you can just go right here on King West and Spadina. It's a heavy area for film financing, so a lot of decisions financially get made here too. So it's another reason why we're right in a lion's den next to a lot of decision makers, right?
That's cool. I didn't know that. You're already teaching me new things.
Well, so I typically try to tell people in the industry, especially, and I don't know, Abigail, if you're asking because you have curious about being in the film industry or just wanting to know about it or looking at something in particular. But I typically tell people just follow the money trail. If you could follow where the money ultimately goes back to, you'll figure out where all the decisions are getting made, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I asked, like, I have a general interest, and I used to want to enter the film industry. It still wouldn't be a bad idea. And I worked as like an intern, an assistant producer. So, but I've never done anything big like you. Like you are a very impressive filmmaker, and I'm just very excited to speak with you for many reasons.
Well, thank you. You're very kind, actually.
Thanks.
Uh, but no, but the reality here is that Toronto is a pretty significant place in the world of film, just in North America. It's just maybe not in the way that most people realize. And I always say, if you follow the money, you're going to end up on King Street West, right?
That's a good saying.
Yeah. Even on the American side, you can start on the American side and follow the money. You'll still probably end up on King Street West, right?
So, like, everyone we've had, we usually we like to bring up AI because it's the new thing that's kind of coming out now. And when I so in as in filmmaking as a whole, not just in Canada, do you think AI could maybe even could it take away jobs from filmmakers, or do you think it could at least change how films are made, stuff like that?
I'm glad you brought that up because I think that this is probably one of the most important conversations that the film industry should be having, not necessarily fighting about or resisting. And I'll give you a perfect example. The actor strike that happened a couple of years ago in regards to obviously AI was a big factor in that. in my opinion, I thought was completely unnecessary because those talks should have been ongoing for maybe the past 5, 7 years. It's not like it just came out of nowhere. This has been slowly kind of progressing to this point for a while. And I can look back and go 10 years, I can say at least, that we've been progressing to the point that we've gotten to today. And I think it's a tool that is not going to go anywhere, and it will, I believe, help filmmakers, producers, on all levels of things. And I understand people think that there's going to be a challenge in a sense that, okay, well, AI is going to be more efficient, so you're not going to need as many people on sets. But there's also a flip side to the story. If you can produce things quicker and more efficiently, you're probably going to do bigger volume. So you may have somebody that's not necessarily working on a film production that could take 6 to 9 months to finish. If we're doing it in half the time, well, now there's an opportunity to go to another production. There's a counterbalance there that I'm not sure people are taking into the equation. But also AI is doing some really interesting things, and I can talk about this from a producer standpoint. To put my producer hat on, there are models in terms of, so when you're putting a film together, and part of the producer work is you have to come up with like a financing plan. How does this picture get financed? And what are the components you're using, and how does that actually come together? So one of the things I'm seeing now with AI is how they're able to almost accurately predict the success of the film with the talent attached. So, and there's a really great company you can go look at called Scene-alytic, and they have a very high percentage accuracy rate when they take a picture, even if it's an independent picture going through the film festival, one of the big ones. They can, with great accuracy, I mean, I'm blown away sometimes when I see these numbers as to what that film will sell for, what it will do in the marketplace. And that's a great tool when you're a producer and you're having to put a financing plan or package together, to be able to almost predetermine the outcome of the film. Because now you can ask other questions. Is this even viable to do? If it is, like, who are we going to build this around? And the more success that you can create, obviously, the more films you're going to produce and the more people you're putting to work, right? But there are other conversations that I think people should be having. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. I speak to actors and I will explain to them that right now, like, let's call it the algorithm, can literally make or break them. Because we're running these simulations, and these simulated forecasts are suggesting all of these different talented people to us, right? From different parts of the world. And if you put this, it's almost like a chess game. If you put this one here and that one there, this is what this ultimately could work out to be financially.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so from that standpoint, I try to encourage a lot of actors to do their best to try to make sure that the algorithm actually knows who they are, right?
Mhm.
Because it's a real thing that's happening right now. So a lot of times I will hear this argument, AI is taking jobs away. I actually believe it's a tool that can help to create more opportunities, but I don't know if we're having the right discussions around it.
Okay.
As in how to utilize it better, how to utilize it in a way where we can have more efficient film productions, so that producers can actually aren't just doing one film a year or one film every 2 years. Maybe we're doing three. And so that just creates more opportunities for more people. And so I personally think the conversation needs to be a little reshaped to explore that more, because there's more opportunity, I think, with AI than without it.
Right.
Okay, interesting insight. Thanks for sharing that. I never really thought of these things before. But now I want to bring up your international awards. You mentioned you had over 30 international awards, including Best Director, which is a very incredible achievement, and that is just so amazing for you. I was hoping you could just kind of share with us what it was like receiving these recognitions, and what it felt like maybe having that spotlight or finally being recognized as a filmmaker.
Well, you're referring to EFC, and EFC was a women's mixed martial arts film that I mentioned earlier, was released last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely more than just a mixed martial arts film. I would say that movie fans of 90s films, 80s films, or just movie fans of drama films, or will find something in the film that they like, attached to, or could appreciate. But to answer your question, Abigail, I have to just kind of go back a bit to our inception point of the film, because then you can appreciate the answer a little bit more. When we announced EFC in 2016 that we were going to go and do this film, at the time, that type of content, like a women's mixed martial arts film, it had never been done before.
Mm-hmm.
The discussions we were having with the distributors, they were confused. They said, well, hasn't been done before. How do you know it's going to work? How do you know this market demand? We literally heard things like, well, these types of films with women in them like this, they don't really tend to actually do well. They don't really draw a lot of money. And my argument was, there's something happening right now in the stratosphere. There was like a movement. Obviously, it was the era of like Ronda Rousey. Something was going on. And my argument to them was this: in 7 to 10 years, will people still be talking about women's MMA? At the time, it was kind of debatable. Nobody could really give a clear-cut answer, although I was fairly convinced that they would be.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had those challenges early on, in a sense that we're trying to figure out what distribution would look like for this film after it gets done, even way before we even start. And we're hearing things like, well, like what I just mentioned to you, that not sure if this would actually work in the marketplace. But we decided to move forward anyways, just because just some basic research showed us that there was actual interest in something like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
A year later, Halle Berry shot a film called Bruised, where she portrayed a women's a mixed martial artist. She had a different take on her story that she also directed. It was a really good film that she did, but they went and shot it the year after, and we were thrilled about that. Trust me, because that having her be first was also a little bit of, okay, here's an example of what could be done. And I know that production had its challenges as well, going into COVID, like we all did, but eventually Netflix picked it up, and they had a really good financial return on it. We shot our film in 2019. We got through it. We had some obstacles getting there. I can go into that a little bit later, I think, in terms of the business of filmmaking in Canada. But we had some obstacles getting there to production, but we did get to production. And we also obviously had a lot of obstacles during production, but we did get through production. And it's interesting to note, and I'll give you another stat here, and this is according to the Actors Union, ACTRA, in Toronto.
Yep.
They told us 80% of independent films that go into production usually don't make it out. So it's a high rate of, I won't call it failure, just not being able to overcome a lot of the obstacles that you're faced with during that process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like this film, one, we defied the odds just by making it, getting through production, but we also ran into, obviously this was 2019, we ran into COVID. COVID created a huge issue for us in the terms of how we were planning to do post-production. And the industry had to quickly evolve, like during that time. Like before COVID, there was remote work, but it wasn't at the level that it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just everything scaled up. They just had to. Everything was forced to just scale up. So before COVID, as a director, I might be flying to wherever the post-production facility is, or going there and just sitting, going through everything, just, the cuts, the details. But after COVID, a lot of people are doing that remotely, just like we're talking right now, remotely, right?
Yep.
And so things scaled up, and so that was part of the challenge, but it was interesting just to watch how the industry had responded to the challenges that we had for however long that went on for, 2-3 years. Eventually we came out of it, and we, again, from the business of filmmaking, when we finished the film, we knew we were going to sign a distribution deal, which we did right away. What I wasn't sure about, obviously having lived with this thing for so long, I know the issues we'd had. I've seen the film a million times. The one good sign, I believe, is that I kept telling our editor, I said, look, every time I watch this film, I like it more and more and more. Usually it's the opposite. Directors will watch their film a million times and they just go the other way. They're like, I've seen it so many times, I just can't watch it anymore. And I said, it's a good sign that I can keep watching this, every pass, every change, every whatever it was. I just like it more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got ready to launch it, just, doing a bit of a run with the marketing, promotion, the festival circuits, but it's hard to know how it's going to be received. The film, because obviously our team, we've been looking at it for so long. You're just not sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really cool to start to see that people who were completely unrelated to this, unconnected, were watching it, and they were enjoying it. And some of the feedbacks, and people said the fight sequences in this film are probably some of the best they've seen in any level of cinema, top to bottom. And so the feedback was great. And I will be honest with you, we started getting recognized about this time last year, and it was kind of an odd feeling at first.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh, okay, we just got nominated for a few different categories with this film. But I think it was in the spring, there was the New York International Film Festival. It just kind of came, I think that's when it really dawned on me what was happening, because we had, I believe, almost 14 nominations.
Wow.
For our film out of one festival there. And we picked up a lot. I believe, I think best sports film, best feature film, best fight choreography, best editing. The list just, it went on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
we were really, really received very, very well in New York. And then again, a place that for some reason I thought I wasn't sure if the audience would connect with this film in Italy. I just wasn't sure because sometimes you just don't know with the markets and the temperaments, and I knew that was a country that likes their family dramas. So I wasn't sure what would happen in Italy, but our first event in Italy was the Rome Prisma Independent Film Festival there, and we won Best Picture there,
Mm-hmm.
which was a surprise to me because I just, again, it was a market I just didn't know how it would respond to. And obviously, later in the year, we were back in Italy for the 44th Palladino d'Oro International Film Festival.
Mm-hmm.
And again, at that festival, we were nominated for, I think, nominated for 7 categories.
Wow.
We won one, obviously, for Best Director, which is the one you're asking me about.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to say all that to get to this point. Even though last year, I think that would have been the 3rd direction award I received.
Wow.
That one hit a little bit different because, I mean, have you been to Italy? Have you traveled out there at all?
No, but it's on my bucket
No?
list.
Okay. Obviously, some of the old architecture there is quite fascinating because
Mm-hmm.
we're sitting in this old opera house and this like theater, and this festival went on for I think almost 10 days, and you had like filmmakers and people from all over the world that had come there, and they're doing this big gala awards night, and you're sitting in a theater. First of all, the theater itself, it's like something from that old Roman era, like the architecture and just the way it was built, the acoustics. And I'm just looking around because it's packed from top to bottom. There wasn't an empty seat anywhere. So we're I, I'm estimating maybe 400 seats probably,
Mm-hmm.
just filled to capacity. And I'm just kind of looking around a little bit dumbfounded because part of me's like, who are all these people, right? Like, where did everybody come from?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm just looking like, well, I guess everybody here has a story. There's so many people here coming in from so many different places, and we all have our own story, but somehow it's a shared story
Mm-hmm.
to some degree. And, my mind is like going there. And somewhere in the process, they're doing this announcement for the next award category, and I missed it. It was for the Best Director award. And because I'm just looking around, just amazed at what I'm seeing with all these people, and just thinking about where did this person come from, and where did that person come from, and like, and we had a good part of our cast here, and I was just kind of looking at them and like, oh, where did we start, and how did we end up here, and all these things are flying through my mind, and all of a sudden I see everybody looking at me, and I'm wondering what just happened, and everybody's just looking at me, like trying to give me a gesture to get up and go. And I'm like, what just happened? And my wife was sitting next to me. She goes, well, you just won. And I'm like, well, what did I win? Best Director, that's you. I'm like, are you sure? She said, yeah, they're waiting for you. You got to hurry up and go. So I just got up, and I didn't really know what was going on. I'm just trying to figure out how to get to the stage. I kind of screwed that up a little bit too, and I think by the time I got to the stage, and I had to say a bit of a speech that I didn't even know what I was going to say at that moment. You would think I'd been better prepared for that, but I wasn't. By the time I was done, I think was the moment I actually caught up to myself.
Mm-hmm.
There was like a big disconnect from physically I'm here, but I'm kind of also somewhere else. I need to somehow reintegrate. And by the time I was in, I think I reintegrated. So as I'm walking off the stage, I was realizing what just happened, and just looking at all these people just looking at me, like trying to say congratulations, congratulations. And by the time I sat down, it's like, wow, this was quite the journey actually, from where we started with this film to where we just got here. And I was very grateful and appreciative for that, because I looked at that and it just to me represented the whole journey of the film, getting to that point, right? Obviously receiving one of their biggest awards of the night, and was grateful. And also, like I said, we had a big part of our cast and our team there, so it was great to just share that with them too at the same time.
Wow. That sounds like a really like out of this world experience. I'm sure lots of
So,
filmmakers dream of that.
so with all like this, how do I word this without? Okay, so how with all this stuff down south of us, all that BS going on, do you think with like filmmaking and like how it is for Canadians? Because do you think it'll be like, oh guys, this is now like our time to shine. We can now show that like here in Canada we can make pretty amazing films without the help of America and all that. Do you think we'll be going down that route, or do you think it's like, okay, maybe we should just like stay away from that crap and just keep doing our own thing?
Dylan, I'm glad you brought this up, because I feel like this is a debate that's been ongoing for a while. And Canada is, as I said earlier, it's a big film hub in terms of being a service industry. So, and what I mean by that is, if you're an American producer or a British producer or any producer anywhere in the world, they essentially like to come to Canada for a lot of reasons. One, the currency exchange. The government has a lot of tax credits, in the sense that you could be one of these big American productions that come here, and if part of your budget you've just spent $20 million on labor, they're going to go back home with most of that money back. Like they'll get reimbursed in tax credits a lot of that capital, because obviously government of Canada wants the jobs here. They have a formula. There's so many people that go to work, pay taxes, etc. So there's a lot of advantages for them to come here. So it created this service sector. We're huge. We have the talent for it, but essentially we're known for the service side. My argument, and a lot of people that will argue what I'm about to tell you, which is going along the lines of what you just said, is that the world is opening up, and the world is actually being more competitive with Canada. So in other words, people saw how successful the Canadian program has been in terms of the incentives they offer for the film productions to come over, the currency exchange, and they've literally copied what we've done. They might be doing it even a little bit better. The only thing that we have going is we have the longevity, the stability, the talent, but essentially the world has decided to compete, and it's all opening up in other countries, whether it's in Asia, Europe, whatever. And now a lot of those productions that would come here, they have more options now in terms of places they can go and shoot. And that's why you'll probably start to see more productions, especially American based. They're shooting internationally. For example, White Lotus, I know, is a big one that's out right now. They were shooting in Thailand. All kinds of incentives to shoot out there. You could look at the state of Georgia. They essentially copied Ontario. They had a plan, I think 10, 15 years ago, to pull all the productions out of Hollywood, copying what we did in Ontario, and bring the film industry down there, which they did successfully, because a lot of the productions in the States aren't happening in California anymore. They're happening in Georgia.
Oh.
So it's getting competitive, and it's going to keep getting competitive. And I feel like in Canada, in order to thrive, we do need to change the focus a little bit. And I'm not saying to take the focus away off the service sector. It's still very, very important. It's always going to be very important. But I do think we need to put more emphasis and we need to put more oomph and more resources behind the producers who can take a Canadian story, for example, and bring it to an international marketplace. So it's not just limited to, okay, there's a story that's happening here in Toronto, but it's not just limited to a Canadian market. It's a story that could be sold in the international marketplace, in the States, in Asia, in Europe, and so we break kind of out of that shell for the most part, and I believe that's where the future is for us here. As the world becomes more competitive, you will need the producers here to produce, but not just produce specifically for our local market, but produce content, Canadian stories, whatever we're doing here that appeals to an international market. So like in EFC, for example, our protagonist, she is from Toronto. It's not really spoken about, but you'll hear in the ring announcements, she's from Toronto. You'll see in the film, you'll see the skyline of Toronto. You'll see all the iconic locations. We kind of establish the fact that this is taking place in Toronto. So is it a Canadian story or not? That I think it's more of an international story, but it's a story we shot here. We went into production here. It was written here. It has a main protagonist who is Canadian, but it's a story that appeals to an international audience.
Yeah.
So I think you need more of that in the future to be competitive with the changing landscape right now. Because like I said, the world is very, very, very competitive now. There's countries that are saying, hey, you can come and shoot in our country. We won't charge you for anything, for like locations or anything like that. Heck, we'll give you your money back before you even spend it. We just want our country featured in your film.
Wow.
How do you compete with that?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good to hear. I like that we're venturing off to different countries, and I know there's tons of small countries out there that have never had any film there or recognition at all, right? So I think it's good that we do that. I'm done with seeing the US in every film. But I'd like to look forward a bit. You have 2 new projects coming up, Let Go and Genesis. What can you share with us about these films? Maybe any spoilers that you can give us?
So Let Go will be out, it looks like in 2026. It's the film's complete. That's going to be quite an exciting film because it was done by a very talented director, Randy Nasser, extremely, the work he did was just amazing. But it's a psychological romantic thriller. And it actually, in lieu of what we just talked about, it was shot in Europe across 14 cities.
Okay.
So again, a Canadian production with the Canadian team, Canadian actors, the 2 actors in it, Alex Cruz and Carly Rose, but it was shot in Europe across 14 different countries, and they go a bit on of a road trip across Europe. And essentially what happens is both characters are kind of looking for something in the other person. I'm not giving anything away too much, that they think is there, but ultimately they won't find. They got to find out other things about themselves. But the chaos that kind of breaks out along the way is something like, I'd say, if you remember Gone Girl with Ben Affleck meets Nora, so to speak. So it's one of those films. I think it's gonna, as the film goes for its ride, it's gonna take everybody else for a ride with it. And really proud of the work that was done there. But just look out for it. I don't think it'll be 2026.
Okay.
Genesis is, after that, is the one we have in development right now, pre-production.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to say that was a film that I personally have always wanted to do. So I get to go back to the director's chair on that one, not just the producer's chair.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a sci-fi thriller that revolves around a world where there are no more original thoughts. So every thought that could be thought has been thought. And the business of the future becomes these think companies trying to come up with original ideas. And they speculate on like a market, just like you'd see the stock exchange or the futures, on what type of value their idea has, if it's original or not. And of course, the protagonist gets to a place where he realizes why we're not having any more original thoughts, which ultimately becomes his original thoughts, and is faced with a moral dilemma in terms of what is he going to do. In terms of, does he go after the money, or does he help to free humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that film is Inception level, like Nolan level. It will be along those budget lines. And just because of the sheer message that I think that film has in it, I think just like a lot of the Nolan films, which I find they're kind of timeless. They don't really age. They're still applicable 10, 20, 30 years later. As a matter of fact, I think with some of his films, people might understand them better 10, 20, 30 years later. I feel like this is one of those films that will do the same. It'll make its impact, but 20 years later, it can still have an impact, and it may still even be making an impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely, like, I would say, the film that I've been wanting to do for all this time. So I'm really excited now that we're at that point where we're in pre-production for it, development, and getting ready to actually make it happen, right? So that one's still maybe a bit of a ways away, but you're going to be hearing a lot about it over the next year.
Mm-hmm.
But just remember, dropped it here for you first. But I'll keep you guys posted on that too, for sure,
Yeah.
as we go along. But yeah, I'm really, really, really excited about Genesis as well, right?
Yeah, it sounds really interesting.
So wrapping things up here. Okay, so what advice would you give to like young filmmakers listening who are dreaming big, but they're facing roadblocks?
So to any young filmmaker, and it's not just young filmmakers, you can be an actor, you can have so many roles in the industry. The one thing I would say to all of those people is you have to look at this as a business, because it is a business. Yes, the creative element is a huge thing, and that's one of the things that draws so many people. But the pitfall sometimes is that a lot of people aren't bringing it together with the business components. So you could be a filmmaker and you've got the best idea for the best script and the best story, the best everything, but then you're sitting there scratching your head, what do I do next? Well, if you had invented a car, you would probably have the prototypes on how to build a car. You would have to determine, okay, who would drive this thing? Okay, one, how do you make people aware of it? Two, how do you get it to market? Three, how do you fund it with the financing plan? Four, which will determine where you actually go to get the funding. And a script is really no different than that. You have a story. Who's going to watch the story? Where are they? How do you reach them? What is it going to cost to make the story? Okay. Once you figure that out, then okay, well, how do you finance it, right? And you go on and on and on. So one of the things I would say is to treat it just like a startup business. your script is an IP, and you have to treat it just as much as somebody, the same way a software developer just developed some software and has got to do the same exact thing to bring their product to the market. So once you start to look at things like that, and have a bit of a different perspective, the steps don't seem so insurmountable anymore, because now you're taking one step to the next step to the next step to the next step, right?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's some good advice. I didn't think of it that way, but thanks for sharing that, and thanks for being here with us today. I think this was a really insightful and entertaining conversation, and I've learned a lot from you.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Just talking to you guys, talking some Canadian stuff. And again, like you said, I'm always down for it, because we're all here having our shared experience. And the more we can help each other, the better it is for all of us, right?
Mm-hmm. I thought you were really great, and you're an excellent speaker, so thank you. And I hope our audience feels the same way.
Well, again, thanks for having me, Abigail, Dylan. It was a pleasure
Yeah,
to meet and speak to you both, actually.
excellent. All right, so thank you for listening to today's episode, and we will see you all in the next one.